Okay, I'm gonna be talking about Saint John Baptist de la Salle, and I'm gonna quickly get right into it. So basically, he was born in 1651. At the time, France and Spain were fighting. He was a very privileged child at the time, if you asked me. He got piano lessons, extracurriculum, but his parents and tutors discussed that when he grows up, he should be a priest, and they all agreed since he is a very educated boy. So, John started on the path that would lead him to becoming a priest. He got a tonsure, which is basically a sign of service in the church. He became a canon of the magnificent Cathedral of Reims, which the canons would gather together each day to pray. And, most of the canons would actually become bishops. The young man spent several years in a seminary preparing to become a priest and wore special clothes that which showed that he is representing the seminary. This was when he was 21, and at the age of 21, while he was in the seminary, his dad died first. His dad didn't die first. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. His mom died, and then his father died. And keep in mind, he was 21, and his brothers and sisters were kind of left alone. So he took action on this and became their legal guardian and invested money for their education and well-being, such as food, home, rent. Yeah. One of the churches or cathedrals, John found this guy named Nicholas. Nicholas was someone that John looked up to, but Nicholas was dying, and he led a school full of young girls who came from or originated from poor families and were in need of an education with their financial situation. He was dying, and since both of them were friends, he asked him for a favor. That the favor would be that he helps the sisters get attention from the king and let them continue their school, aka, the king letting them continue the school of young girls with an education. So, he secured a deal with the king and helped them, and they were able to keep the school. He met this guy, Adrian Niel, who made schools of the cities of Rouen and opened some schools for boys and that came from poor families. And John wanted to help them, but he saw that the schools were full of uneducated teachers or poor mannered and the students were just very, very, very mischievous. So, John took up the opportunity of teaching these teachers, and, well, he teach the teachers. And he invited them to a dinner one day in his family's house to show his generosity and gratitude and that he believes in him. But the family disagreed with him, but John didn't care, you know. He believed that they will become more mannered and, let the teachers stay in his house. And now John considered them as family. But some of the teachers started becoming discouraged and didn't want to work anymore because they got nothing in return. And John was just getting way too discouraged. So John felt that now he had to give up the special responsibility of being given a cathedral, of being in a canon. So he saw his bishop and he gave up being a canon and felt like he had to spend more time with the teachers and guiding them. So he did that. But he felt like he could have spent his money on the schools, but he thought it was better in God's will to give it away during a time of cold, famine, and sickness in the time of 1683 to 84. God made a, not God, John. He made a group called, quote unquote, the Brothers, and every dedicated teacher could join the group of brothers where they would be students to each other's and they would learn from each other's. and they should show their dedication to spreading the word of God and representing or telling each other that telling students that they are in the holy presence of God. Only two of the original group of teachers became brothers, and it was pretty devastating, and not many people were interested. But many people were happy that the school was keeping the children off the streets. The school has good disciplines, but they also got made fun of for their outfits and stuff. Many of the teachers or brothers, they were getting very ill at a young age, and this was very devastating for John and the school in general, and with many controversy within the parents, the school was sort of going downfall. But the brothers were actually now invited to work in a school in Paris, and they were walking down the path, just talking about it in general. Many of the brothers were invited to work in Paris or France or many other places or open schools, and John would give them advice regularly to remind them of what their purpose was and that God gives them the power to perform miracles by touching the hearts of others. But as this went on, John was actually sued or was caught up into legal trouble for doing literally absolutely nothing or just misinformation. Um, Tutors are getting mad that his open education or free was taking the profit from them, and they spent hours or time looking through misinformation they could use against them. So, which they did, and he got a order from the court to take down most of the schools, and yeah, most of the schools were taken down, and he went into a retreat to reflect on this situation. Actually, no, that's later on. Right now, John actually appeared in the Marseillais in the port of south of France, and everyone wants them there to have open schools and pay for novitate, novitate, novitiate, or something. But yeah, many people didn't like them. The Jarnists believed that God was harsh and that they had to earn his love. And many people were against their beliefs. And some people even went out of their way to make sure that no money supports their schools. This was a disaster. But John kept going and believed that this will get better. But John was ill and in pain for many years, and the doctor's treatments weren't working that much. So now, finally, he reached this part of the story where he actually mm, decides to go to a nearby place of retreat, Harmony, a peaceful place on top of the mountains. And he used this place to reflect or look upon his mistakes and what he could have been done better. And throughout this, he kept blaming himself, and even people were telling him that the brothers needed him. But one day, the brothers sent him a letter that they need a superior and they needed John back. So John returned to the brothers and he heard that they needed a leadership. So yeah, he actually came up with this idea where there would be a reformatory for children that were in trouble, and it was just a really good place for them to work and learn about work in general. He was congratulated for his work, but he felt like it was time for them to get a new superior, and Brother Bartholomew was elected as the new superior by majority votes, and John moved on with his life. Although he did continue returning to the schools when some of the pupils weren't at there, he spent most of his lifetime writing books for teachers and pupils, and he would write to the brothers usually to talk to them and socialize with them. But he was getting frail and old, and there were many bad accidents happening with his physical self, and he usually fall and stuff. And yeah, these injuries were especially very serious for a old and frail man. For him, no offense, John. But on a good day, Friday 7th of April 1719, John died, and he reached 67 years old. That's when he died. That was his age when he died. Yeah. Even as John Ling dying on the dying, the archbishop, who had been given wrong information about John, sent him a message. He was no longer to be allowed to hear anyone's confession. Now he died. Yeah, he died. And in the end, 200 years later, John was declared a saint, and in 1950 he was made the patron, or the saint of teachers. And now there are more than 25 brothers who join him in being called saint or blessed from Belgium, Ecuador, France, Reunion, and Spain. That is everything about John. This was actually inspired by the comment of De La Salle. I'll actually leave the PDF link in the description if you're interested in reading the comic. That is it.